And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks.
What's up? Welcome. Move the Sticks here. DJ, Bucky, and the Combine is behind us. The draft is in front of us. Buck, we got a lot to get to today.
A lot to get to today. We're going to talk about the draft's top quarterbacks. We're going to talk about some of the top performers at the Combine. And then we'll talk about the Brock Osweiler effect and how his decision will affect how the draft shakes out, particularly at the top of the board.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into today. We're going to jump right into it. But real quick, how many pounds did you put on down in Indy?
You know, I think I did a pretty good job because I decided to work out with Ike Taylor. Ike Taylor was giving me a workout every day. He is an animal when it comes to working.
Give me one workout. Give me one workout.
Okay, he had me do a workout. I had to modify it. The workout was we were going to run sprints at an 8% incline.
Okay.
11 miles per hour.
Ooh.
6 seconds on, 10 seconds off.
Okay.
42 reps.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That gets you?
Yeah, it got me because I had to modify it. So
what's the Bucky version of this?
My version was the same times the incline was at 5.0. I did 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, 2-to-1 rest.
Okay.
And I did 30 of them. And it was
11
still a
though?
lot.
You got to 11?
Yeah, I got to 11. Like, I'm fine doing 11. I normally do quarters or 400s on the treadmill at 10.0, so 11 wasn't too fast. But the rapid interval training that Ike does, unbelievable. And I've heard from Mark Ishtuk and Maurice Jones-Drew that he has a 9-minute ab thing that will put you to sleep. Like, it's a lot. But, like, Ike is fresh off the field, so I'm not trying to fool myself.
I was at Steak and Shake eating Oreo milkshakes, so I guess I need to jump on that Ike Taylor program before we get too close to the draft here. Let's jump in here, Buck. The quarterbacks, Carson Wentz from North Dakota State, Jared Goff from Cal. Thought they both had solid combines, but coming into it, we had different guys at the top, and I think coming out of it, we stay the same way.
Yeah, I think we stay the same. The one thing that's apparent to me is these two guys, and then it's the rest of the crew. These are the two best quarterbacks. These are two guys that I think are worthy of top 10 selection. It's a matter of what do you want at the position. For me, my preference right now is Jared Goff. Specifically when we're talking about Cleveland at 2. Jared Goff to me is quick, decisive. He's accurate. I like his footwork. I like the way he is able to execute full field reads. And I believe his eyes and feet are tied together. So he's going to be a guy that is consistent, particularly in throwing short and intermediate throws. And so as you're building your offense around him, you understand that, like, he's not necessarily the best deep ball thrower. He has that in his arsenal, in his repertoire, but he's going to be a connect-the-dots player, much like a Matt Ryan in the pocket. And so if I am the Cleveland Browns and I'm sitting at 2, I want to make sure I have to hit a double. I can't strike out. After having a number of quarterbacks come in and not kind of live up to expectation, I need to kind of be a little more skewed towards the safe side. I'm going to go with Jared Goff just because I think he's the safest of the two.
Yeah, I like Jared Goff a lot. I thought even specifically on the Combine, you touched on the deep ball, a little inconsistent there, but I would say the footwork was outstanding. We predicted that before the Combine started. He's got great feet. I thought he throws a nice catchable ball. Not a ton of heat, but he can change ball speeds, make all the different throws with anticipation, timing, and touch. I liked all those things about Goff. To me, I lean towards Carson Wentz because obviously the size that exists. We saw that there. He's more athletic. The numbers will bear that out. But to me, even just how firm he was, everything about him is firm. He gets his feet in the ground when he throws a football. He can generate a lot of RPMs on it. I just think some of those stick throws, you're going to have a little bit of an advantage there for Wentz. And then if you want to move the pocket, he was comfortable there as well. My big thing, I think we even talked about this on the preview, for both these guys really, was going into the Combine. They just need to just show some poise. Don't let the moment get too big for you. Just relax and do your thing. I thought both those guys did that, and I think we could go through and go one by one to the rest of these quarterbacks. Some of them are pretty tight.
Yeah, some are pretty tight, and they fell apart. And that's why I believe the divide is significant between the top 2 and the others that are vying for that third spot. Carson Wentz, having an opportunity to interview him on the set at the desk, loved his intelligence. I liked his competitiveness. And, you know,
he's got some swagger to him, too.
He does.
You don't expect that. He's got a presence.
Yeah, he has a presence that I'm like, okay, I definitely can see him being the face of the franchise. I definitely can see him being the leader of the team. So I was encouraged by all of those things. And I was also encouraged by Goff. And so it's funny when you look at Carson Wentz, and a lot of people, I got into it with a private quarterback coach who was trying to figure out why this guy has kind of been on the rise. And I was like, well, he just checks off all the boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, even though he played at a small school level, he goes to the Senior Bowl. He does his deal. He was
Clearly
the best
guy.
Clearly the best one, the most talented guy. The moment wasn't too big. He did it against elite competition. I liked it. He goes to the combine, checks the boxes, interviews well, performs well on the turf. And so there's nothing to not like. I mean, what's not to like about the guy? And with Jared Goff, I think it's the same deal. 37 starts. He's a guy that took his team from 1-11. They finished 8-5. I like the resiliency that he displayed. He stuck it out. Both guys, to me, are guys that I'm very comfortable putting the name on the card and sending it in. It's just a matter of what style quarterback do you want to be your quarterback for the long term.
The fun thing now as we go through this evaluation process, we got a long time. We got, I think, 57 days until we get to the draft. So a lot more time to dig in and study these guys. And you can, what I like to do is sorting some throws and being able to watch them. I want to watch like a 3rd and 7 plus reel of both these guys. Watch how they do. I want to watch in close games, go through their career, all their starts, and we have the technology to do this, which is pretty sweet. Be able to sort the drives they have when it's tied game in the fourth quarter, when they're down in the fourth quarter. Because it seems like the tapes I roll through on Wentz, one of the things that pops up to me, and I write it down in my notes, man, the guy's been clutch. He's been money on big downs, 4th downs, close games. He's delivered, and say the competition level, what have you. But to me, that's an important thing to look at.
I think it's very important. I'm huge on looking at guys in situations. I want to see how they perform in the red zone. I want to see what they do coming back. How are they when their team is down and they need you to kind of go from being a game manager to being a playmaker? And I think both guys shine in that regard. I will say that Carson Wentz, what he can give a team, an added dimension that Jared Goff doesn't bring, in the red zone, he's a runner.
Yeah.
He can run. He can execute some of the quarterback power, some of the quarterback sweep things that we've seen Cam Newton do. And so he has some extra stuff to him. I like Jared Goff. I kind of liken him to Matt Ryan. I believe if you build a system similar to what they did in Atlanta with Matt Ryan, physical running game, having talented guys on the outside, he can thrive. The one question I'm going to ask you this, in your experience, the hand size, because it came up that he had 9-inch hands, and there was a lot of conversation coming out about that. How big did you guys view that in Baltimore and Phil in your other previous stops? Was that a significant deal for quarterbacks?
If you were in the 8s, it was discussed in the meeting room, and it could be an issue. At 9 and above, we kind of just moved on. And I think he'll be fine with this. I don't think that's going to hit him much. Tony Romo has 8 and change, and he's been fine. To me, if you get in some of those teams, I know Green Bay has obviously been big on that for a long time, but 9, I think that's kind of the threshold. I think we can move on from it.
The only other thing I would do as it relates to Jared Goff, I would like to – now I have to do this. I need to dig up a cold weather game, and I know it's hard on the West Coast, but trying to find a cold weather game, something that kind of mimics the conditions that he could face on
maybe
a routine
rainy day,
on a routine basis in Cleveland. Maybe it's looking at a game versus Wazoo at Wazoo or UW, somewhere where he had to battle through some conditions just to see if the hand size, if any of that stuff mattered when it came to ball security.
All right, let's move on to some of these other top guys here. Joey Bosa. I mean, look, Bucky, we were both in the building. I thought it was a solid day. I mean, I don't think he didn't wow you with what he did, but I thought he moved around fluid. I thought he was fine. It was interesting to me a little bit that kind of the narrative outside the building got rolling, that it was just this devastatingly poor workout. I didn't walk away with that feeling at all.
No, I didn't walk away with the feeling that it was a poor workout. The one thing that stood out was the 40 time. He had a 4.86 40-yard dash. All the other numbers were okay. People took him to task a little bit with the vertical jump, but to me, the vertical jump and the 40-yard dash, they kind of relate because it speaks to your explosiveness and your athleticism. You look at the 3-cone drill, the fact that he was in the 6'8" range, all those things are fine. I think you and I have talked about Joey Bosa ad nauseum, and that he's not an elite quick or twitchy athlete. He doesn't have elite first step quickness, and I think that shows out when you see him move around. I think he's a solid player, like above a solid player, someone that can come in. But I think if you're expecting him to be Superman off the edge, I think you can be a little disappointed because he just doesn't have that athleticism.
I think he's 10, 11 sacks. I think that's what he can get you, which is great. That's a rock solid player. He's not going to be in that, the Houston and some of these other guys that are up there, and Von Miller.
High 22s. It's funny.
15 to 20 sacks.
The comparison I've seen, now that we're off the comparison with J.J. Watt, the comparison that's beginning to come up is Jared Allen, which I can see a little.
I hear Chris Long.
Chris Long. I will throw out Michael Bennett from the Seattle Seahawks, a guy that can kind of do some things because the
Bucky, that's not allowed. Sorry, I don't mean to jump in. You know that's not allowed. People don't do the cross-racial comparison.
No.
Oh,
you know the drill.
You want to move the stick?
Wes Welker. Wes Welker, Danny Amendola. You gotta.
No.
I'm joking by that.
Yeah, we mixed that up. But
break the mold with that.
I think Michael Bennett is a very apt comparison because when you see Joey Bosa kick down and do some things that defense
guards are going to struggle blocking.
Yeah, the three technique. I think he can do some of that stuff that Michael Bennett does, and so I think it makes for an interesting dilemma. If for whatever reason he falls and he's sitting there at 5 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, knowing Gus Bradley's history, what he was able to do in Seattle with that defense, would he be an attractive option as kind of a guy that can move around and do a couple of different things? In essence, if they're able to get Joey Bosa at 5, they get 2 first-round picks because Dante Fowler comes back, Joey Bosa. Now your pass rush looks vastly different than it did previously.
That's strong. Ezekiel Elliott felt he was the top running back coming into this. I still feel that way coming out of it. I have him, I believe, at 6 or so on my top 50 list. Oh, it was a really, really good performance for him. Did drop the ball a couple times, a little disappointed in that, but 40 time was excellent. Jumps maybe a little bit disappointing, but look, overall, pretty solid day for Mr. Elliott.
Yeah, I think he's pretty solid. You look at the numbers there on the board, 4.47, 32.5-inch vertical. I would like to see a more explosive broad jump, but, I think he's fine. Obviously, Zeke does his deal on the field. There's no question about his talents. He's a downhill runner. He has the ability to be a workhorse back. And so for the right team, I think he can be a guy that immediately changes the fortunes of the franchise because I believe you can give it to him 25, 30 times a game. He can alleviate the pressure on the quarterback and allow your offense to thrive. We need to see him perform better in the passing game. I thought he was going to be much better in terms of catching passes. I thought he'd be a little more natural based on what I knew from him in high school, but he has to short it up on his pro day. If he does that, he kind of reminds me of Frank Gore. I think he's a guy that can kind of be that kind of player that can help you in every phase, runner, receiver, and pass protection.
I have him based on grade, like I said, as a 6 overall player, but I've had some interesting conversations with people. Some people say, he's a great player. Just go ahead and take him up there in the top 10 and look at Todd Gurley and this, that, and the other. I've had other people say, hey, maybe we can't get him in the 3rd round, but we can take a guy in the 4th round and then in the 6th round. And between the two players, we can kind of do what Ezekiel Elliott's going to do for us, and then we can take an impact player there with our first pick there in the top 10. And kind of one of the things that was mentioned to me was, and last year was a deep running back group, so maybe this is a little bit tough to do, but Todd Gurley was unbelievable, rookie of the year, fantastic. They got David Johnson in the 3rd round. You can go on and on. There's a laundry list of these guys, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round every year. And so there are some people that are saying he's great. No, he's the best back in the draft, but I'm still not going to do it up there that high.
That's funny because one of the things that I may write is the dilemma of taking a running back within the top 10. That's been a sudden shift over the last decade. We used to see a bunch of guys go, and man, I remember just early when I was scouting, Cadillac and Ronnie Brown and all those guys went in the top 10.
Jamal Lewis. Jamal Lewis.
Yeah, those guys were coveted because you can have it. And now there's kind of been a drop-off. And in fact, outside of Todd Gurley, the last couple of top 10 picks that we've seen, C.J. Spiller, Trent Richardson, some of the others, they haven't panned out to the level of what that draft pick should be when it comes to expectations. So huge dilemma and debate when it comes to Ezekiel Elliott because when you look at some of the other running backs, can you get value moving back and dropping back? And so I think that's the thing. Even though the league supposedly is shifting to a pass-first premise, I still believe the running back is value. He's a little diminished in terms of his value, but I still think he's very, very important.
Before we move on to the next one here, one thing you do, though, as a team, you look at those package of players, say, okay, I can have Ezekiel Elliott is my 1st-round pick, and I'm going to pair him up with who I get in the 2nd, 3rd round at different positions. Or I can take, stud corner, stud defensive line with my first 2 picks, and then the 3rd round, maybe I get the kid from Louisiana Tech, and, I like that package of players better than what you would get here.
And that's one of the things that we do. We sit around in rooms. We would do it probably the 2 weeks leading up to the draft. What would be our dream scenario? If we could sit there and coming away at the end of day 2, who would be the 3 or 4 players that we would love to have? And sometimes you weigh that. You go back and forth. Well, I can get the super talented corner. You talk about maybe I get a Vernon Hargreaves or a Jalen Ramsey first, and I can come back in the 2nd round, and maybe I get an Alex Collins, and I'm fine with Alex Collins and that as opposed to
or C.J. Procise in the 3rd round.
Right, and so those are the things that you have to have a really comprehensive feel for what is in this draft. Where is it deep at? Where is it weak at? And I always advocate get your talented players from the shallow pool of talent early so you can come back and find those gems in that deep pool, whatever those positions are.
All right, last one here for the top guys that we'll touch on real quick. Jalen Ramsey, Buck, I mean, do we even need to say anything? I mean, he just checks everything.
He's everything. He's a world-class athlete and a spectacular football player, and you just don't find those combinations. The big thing for Jalen Ramsey is what position does he play?
Yeah, what do you need?
Is he a corner? Yeah. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he your Swiss Army knife in the back end, much like a stretched-out honey badger, Tyrann Mathieu? And so in looking at him, I mean, the numbers are ridiculous. 4.41. You see the vertical jump, the broad jump over 11, the three-cone drill. He is a spectacular athlete. The thing that teams will spend the rest of the time doing up to the draft is trying to hone in what is the best position for him and how can we map a plan out for him to be on the field as much as possible and make the biggest possible impact. Is that a corner? Is that a safety? Is that moving around? And how much can he handle from an aptitude standpoint?
I got a chance. You know him a lot better than I do. I got a chance to visit with him a little bit down there, and I was just struck just how impressive he was, with his personality and his intelligence, all that stuff together. I mean, I thought after visiting with him and just seeing how just sharp he was on everything, I'm sitting here going, man, why limit him? Why say he's a corner, he's a safety, he's a nick? No, dude, who are you playing? Who you play this week?
And it's funny.
And then we'll use him where we can shut down what they do best.
I had that conversation. I'm sure you get hit with this sometimes, like sometimes with coaches that and coaches haven't had the opportunity to really study him, and they ask you, well, what do you think about him? What do you think? Where would you play him? Mm-hmm. And I told a couple of defensive back coaches, in my mind, he's an eraser. He is a guy that you change week by week based on what the other team has. If they have a Rob Gronkowski, he plays over the tight end that week. If they have a dynamic slot receiver, he can play in the slot. If we want to affect the running game, maybe I put him as a nickel backer and allow him to blitz off the edge. To me, a creative defensive coordinator can have a lot of fun with Jalen Ramsey. And so the big thing I take out of it is you need to have a plan, and that plan needs to be articulated, and everyone understands when we bring him in, here's what we expect to be able to do in year 1 and year 2 and going forward.
And to me, we always hear that combination with the offensive line. To me, the good offensive line coaches say, we're going to get our best 5 on the line. Well, in order to do that, you have to have that one Swiss Army knife where if a guy gets hurt, he can slide over and play this position, which allows you to keep your best 5 in
Absolutely.
there. So if you draft, if you have a team and you're corner heavy or you're safety heavy, he can fill in wherever you need him to be. And then somebody gets hurt, it always allows you to have your best guys on the field because you can put him anywhere.
And that's the thing. And the thing that we've always heard is take the best players and figure it out after you acquire the best players. But if you take good players and you make sure you take guys who have the ability to be transcendent stars, you can never go wrong because those guys typically have the ability to make those around them better. Jalen Ramsey, to me, is a guy in the secondary. He's going to make your secondary better because he can fill a number of spots and upgrade your talent at that position.
All right, before we move on to some impressive numbers we had at the Combine, TD, I'm going to hit you up with some basketball history because you challenge yourself as this big basketball guy. So can you Can you tell me the story about the conversation that Bobby Knight had with the Trailblazers general manager the year Michael Jordan was coming out?
Ooh. Was it the story about how
the Sam Bowie, right?
Yep. Sam Bowie year, and it's like, just don't worry about having. It had something to do with don't worry about having Clyde Drexler on your team.
He said the Trailblazers GM said, I have Clyde Drexler. We need a center, so we're going to take Sam Bowie. And Bobby Knight said, if you need a center, play Michael Jordan at center.
There you go. Much better said.
You know what I mean? Like just take the best dude, and he can play anywhere, do anything you want. So
find a way to figure it out. Be able to think out the box. Be creative enough to understand that I have an opportunity to get a special player, and there are only a handful of special. Don't mess up. Don't mess it up. Don't overthink it. Make sure we always talk about trying to fill needs, but it's a delicate line, and skipping over talented players to fill a need. Get the good players and then figure the rest of the stuff out.
All right, let's go to some impressive numbers at the Combine. The Combine, the interviews, the medicals are very important, but there are some numbers that matter. And when I look at the number for Josh Docton, the wide receiver from TCU, we've talked about him leading in, Bucky. And to your credit, you were on him a little bit higher than I was. I had a concern about his speed. Just how fast is he? That 4.50 that he logged might have been the most important number of the entire Combine.
Absolutely. The fact he was able to come in that low now changes the narrative about him, because there was some concern about his speed, his ability to kind of function and maybe take the top off the defense if you had to have him run vertical routes. But in looking at his performance, man, I was so impressed with his explosiveness, the way that he ran in routes. But to be honest, his ball skills, he was so impressive catching the ball,
fluid.
snatching the ball. It was so easy for him. His big hands just kind of swallowed up the ball. To me, he's a guy that is a natural number one. And when I rethink my wide receiver rankings, I do believe there's going to be some discussion when it comes to Laquan Treadwell and him, depending on how Laquan runs, about who is the guy that should be the number one receiver in terms of if I need an anchor of my passing game. Do I want Laquan, or am I more impressed with Josh Docton because he also can give me that athleticism and maybe some vertical ability?
Yeah, he plays above the rim too. I definitely am going to dig back in and do some more work on him. I got to get him right, get him figured out. That's the nice thing about the draft process. There's a long time, and you get through this combine, it can drive you back to the tape and maybe can kind of alter some things a little bit. Not going to be drastic, but definitely cause you to do a little bit more work. The 41-inch vertical was impressive as well, and his pluck on the last catch of the
turnaround.
Oh my
the
God!
Ball is behind
on the
him.
gauntlet drill.
Just so
he just flipped so fluidly, just spun right around, caught it, and to me that was the best catch of the entire combine was him on at the end of that gauntlet drill.
You know, the big thing, 9 7/8 hand, that was huge. That's something that I was really, really intrigued by. And then I look at Laquan Treadwell's hand, 9.5. So big hands for both of those guys. It'll be interesting to see how Laquan works out because I think he also was equally impressive in terms of just going through the drills, running the routes. It was so easy for him that he looked like a number one receiver that was ready to go from day one.
All right, a corner, another big number here, 4.37. That's the 40 time for William Jackson from Houston, and we talked leading into the combine. That's going to be big for him. How fast does he test? Because the toughness, the ball skills, that's all there. It may be a little bit tight, but this is somebody, man, I think he's a plug-and-play corner. He's got the size that you covet. Now you see the speed to go along with the ball skills, the toughness. I think he's got a chance to go in the first round, Buck.
I absolutely believe he has an opportunity to sneak into the first round. He is a guy that is – I mean, when I saw him at the Chick-fil-A Bowl against Florida State, it wasn't too big for him. He made a couple plays, a couple interceptions. You see,
they beat the dog out of Florida State in that
knocked
game.
him around. I like the footwork, the transitions that he was able to do in the DB drills. Very impressive. But the 4.37 changes how you view him because now you view him as a guy that can run with some of those speedsters that are on the perimeter. I believe he absolutely has a chance to go somewhere in the 20s. Teams like Cincinnati, Pittsburgh like those big corners that can play zone, that can do some things. Kansas City could be another team. Seattle could be a team. He's going to garner a lot of interest kind of in the bottom of the first round. I think he's someone that you got to keep an eye on.
All right, let's get to this Brock Osweiler effect, which is not a it's not a disease. It's not a it's not a name of it. It'd be a good movie title, the Osweiler effect.
Yep.
Something going on there. No, to me, he's not tagged. They had to tag Von Miller. So Osweiler looks like he could get to the market. And you look at some of the teams that could be in the mix for him. I thought he played well in the trial period that he got there. I think he started like 7 games.
Yep.
I thought he was very respectable. And you say, okay, well, that's not the most glowing endorsement. But I want to give you some teams, and you tell me what they would be like with just a respectable quarterback. Houston Texans. Buck, you put a solid quarterback with what they have on defense. What does that look like?
I mean, I think it helps them become a legitimate contender in the AFC. They're already there with a defense and an offense that is kind of putting it together with just Nuke Hopkins on the outside. If you're able to land Brock Osweiler as a free agent, then at the 22nd pick, say you're able to get a running back, maybe Ezekiel Elliott comes in, your offense changes dramatically because you already have DeAndre Hopkins on the outside. I like that. I like that plan if I'm the Houston Texans because it does put us in a position to challenge the top teams in the AFC.
What if you get a Corey Coleman from Baylor and throw him in there?
Oh,
Some
man.
Juice
Speed,
over the top to
juice
go
over the
along
top
with Hopkins.
to help out DeAndre Hopkins. You got a quarterback that has been seasoned. He's been in the league for a little bit. He has some games under his belt playing in Denver. I can't imagine Denver letting him out. I mean, I know.
But he's got. If they don't have him done before we get to free agency,
Man.
I think the price is going to be a lot more than people think. All right, let's go to one more here. Still get used to saying the LA Rams. But if you're LA, I know one thing. You tell me I have a choice between even overpaying Brock Osweiler or taking Paxton Lynch at 15. I'm going to overpay Brock Osweiler.
Absolutely. I'm going to pay him because he has skins on the wall. He's been in the pros for 4 seasons. He has those reps on the practice field. The game isn't too fast for him because we've seen what he can do. I got a big back behind him in Todd Gurley. I now can use my draft pick maybe to add another receiver, add another playmaker to help.
Add
him
offensive
out.
lineman if you want.
I mean, you have so many options. So it could be sensible depending on their salary cap situation, what they want to do. It opens up the draft for them to continue to take the best players. And they are a team that has a talented roster. they're missing the middle, the most important piece, which is that quarterback that can kind of get them over the hump in that tough division.
And if you're Osweiler, look, I know you try and make these football decisions, but man, you think about it from like a branding standpoint. If you're kind of looking at the big picture here, team comes back to L.A. They've got a loaded roster, and now you kind of plug in. You could run this town.
He could run the town. He and Ty Gurley could share.
And he's a poster boy. Like, he looks like Brock Osweiler kind of cuts the image of L.A.
He could
flowing hair.
He could definitely share the marquee with Ty Gurley. And more importantly, they could win a lot of games with that kind of combination. Having a really solid quarterback with a tough running game and being able to continue to build that defense, that would be the way for the L.A. Rams to go.
How about Cleveland? Cleveland's picking all the way up there at number 2. They had to look at him, right? I mean, Jackson had to look at him when he was in Cincinnati last year, and they went up to Denver, and Osweiler got them. Got the Bengals in that one. So he's seen what he can do, and then you free up that number 2 pick. We've talked about Jalen Ramsey. He looked pretty good in Cleveland too.
He certainly would look pretty good in Cleveland. They can do a bunch of different things. So when you're the number 2 pick, it gives you the opportunity to get an impact player. And some of the impact players that we've repeatedly talked about in this draft, you now have your quarterback situation filled. Also, your rookie quarterback doesn't have to come in amidst the expectations that have kind of haunted the other draft picks that were drafted high. Yeah, you bring Osweiler in. We've seen the track record not only with Pep Hamilton but with Hugh Jackson, with quarterbacks throughout his time. Could be a very, very good move. It depends on the payday. How big is the payday? How big?
I think it's going to be.
I
think it's going to be pretty big.
Would it be?
I mean, what are the other options out there? Chase Daniel, I guess, is out there.
Not enough. I think
Daniel, I think in L.A. though, would he make some sense there? I mean, hand the ball off, just be a manager, you know.
But then I guess the big thing would be how big of an upgrade is that over Case Keenum? If you're just
I think it's an upgrade, but I think it's maybe not the biggest upgrade.
Absolutely.
But it'll be interesting to see how free agency shakes out, and that's definitely going to affect everything as we march towards the draft. Going to change some needs for these teams and maybe change their direction a little bit. I do know. Man, there's a couple teams. You see how much money Jacksonville has underneath the cap?
A lot of money, but our buddy Dave Caldwell saying he's going to be real stingy with that money.
I think they're going to spend some of it. I mean, this is a big year for them. They need to load up on the defensive side of the ball. If they say they go get a corner or something else in free agency, then they get Dante Fowler back, which you mentioned earlier. Now you pick a Miles Jack or a Joey Bosa or whoever else to go in that front 7. Now we're having some fun in Jacksonville.
Yeah, that defense is the thing that's keeping them back. That offense is ready to go. They have all the pieces in place to have a terrific offense, but on defense, they need some more blue-chip players, some guys that can give them an immediate impact. They get those guys, Jacksonville can make a legitimate run in the AFC South.
First of all, TD, I mean, you're going to jump in on me like that, man. You got to give me a little bit. He just hit me with the let's start to wrap. He's just scared the crud out of me right there.
That was off air.
Jumped.
That was off air, Jay. That was off
hot.
air.
You came in a little hot right there.
My bad.
That's right. You just want to make sure that we're reminding people that they can leave some comments for us on the bottom of these YouTube videos, as well as give us a review on iTunes. I see we got a couple more reviews on there. Tell us what you like, what you don't like about the show. Subscribe on iTunes. You can catch us NFL.com/podcast if you want to listen to us there. Lots of different ways you can catch.
I saw you had a nice picture on Instagram. So make sure.
We got what's your Instagram?
At Big Play Football. So at Big Play Football, at Move the Sticks is your Instagram. We already know the Twitter stuff, but we can build up that following a little bit.
Yeah, no question. Let's get the Instagram game going a little bit. I'm not. Don't miss out on Vine either. I'm not afraid to throw Vine. It's Move the Sticks as well. Anyways, Bucky, myself, we'll be back next week as we continue to march towards the draft. And be sure to check out Path to the Draft each and every day, 6 Eastern on NFL Network. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for downloading Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. For more, go to NFL.com/podcasts.